Good morning, YouTube. I'm going to post another small video today. In the description of this video, there's going to be a link to a video that more clearly kind of lays out what I've been trying to convey, dealing with Afro-Indigenous people, which are people mixed with both Native American, Indigenous American, and African lineage. I think it's important to say, and this isn't to, again, be racist, because I know that's probably going to come eventually. Anyway, it's just a matter of shedding light on an important topic with these so-called Aboriginal or copper skin groups that are, in fact, practicing a brand of indigenous erasure. We've already survived that from the white man. My tribe in particular, the white man tried to remove our federal recognition status and effectively did in 1880. Regardless of that fact, we still kept our tradition, our culture, our history, and language alive. And we reclaimed our federal recognition in 1984. That's my biggest issue with these folks, is the fact that they themselves are essentially just going over what was already done to the native people here with trying to erase them and then elevate themselves in. Now, some people will say it's not for profit. However, if you go into the comments section, all it talks about is, essentially 40 acres and a mule. It talks about, claiming benefits, being owed millions. So it absolutely is about some of these folks wanting money. Some people just legitimately want to reconnect with their tribal nations and have a better understanding of their heritage and whatnot. And I applaud those people. I commend those people as Afro-Indigenous people that truly want to understand, who and what they are and where they came from. That's wonderful. I mean, we have people like that within our own tribe, that did come back after a number of years. And some of them, when their familial ties were confirmed, were reintegrated into the tribe and became full-fledged tribal members. Do your research, do your genealogy, find out where you come from, and then contact the tribe, that you came from, and see what can happen there. Of course, there are different guidelines and different conditions for tribal enrollment depending on the tribal nation. Every tribe is different. There's over 500 tribes, federally recognized tribes within the United States. So, do your research, find out where you come from, find out who you are, and then, contact your people and reach out. But no, that's not the case with everybody. There is this prevailing mentality of this movement or so, whatever you want to call it, that's on the rise, in which people are trying to say that, the first people here were, Africans, which is not true. It's just simply not true. And again, as I stated in the previous video, this is, I have nothing against African American people or black people, or however people want to categorize or classify themselves. Not at all. But I do want to shed light on this topic because it absolutely is indigenous erasure. Again, it's an offshoot, and it's just a repackaging of what the federal government and what the white man try to do with my people, and a number of other tribes. To varying degrees of success. So I'm going to post a link in the description to another video. I believe the guy's name is Thomas, Oklahoma, in which he's interviewing a number of different people and has compiled some clips of other folks, Afro-Indigenous people who are, again, a mixture of Native American and African American. And, this is Native history, that people are trying to erase and trying to claim and trying to absorb these folks into whatever narrative that they're trying to build. And what you're doing is you're truncating and you're destroying Native history. You're also destroying African American history, because in a lot of cases, those histories are intertwined. Again, you have two oppressed, marginalized people that saw they had a similar plight in this country, and, they came together. This, like I said, this has happened since, post-colonial times all the way up to present. And, that is a part of our history. It's a shared history, with the African American community and the Native American community. And to try to just absorb that into, this Aboriginal movement completely destroys that. And it destroys these people's legacy and their trials and their struggles and their triumphs ultimately. And that is fundamentally wrong. You shouldn't be doing that to other people of color. If anything, if you want to, find out the truth, and you want to, do some real research rather than just listening to some of these YouTubers or, Facebook pages or TikTok accounts or, Twitter X pages and whatnot, come and ask some of us. We have no problem talking to you, and it's not going to be critical and putting you down or nothing like that. I have no problem with any individuals except those folks that are posting misinformation. My previous video addressed some of the misinformation being pumped out there by an influencer who titles himself the research guy. He says that he has Choctaw ancestry, which maybe he does. I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is simply the misinformation that he's putting out there, and that people are absorbing, and people are trying to run with it as if it's gospel truth. As I state at the end of most of my videos, the truth isn't what we want it to be. The truth simply is what it is. And that's just the fact of the matter. So anyways, I'm going to post the link in the description. I would advise you to check it out, because it is, it's another iteration of what I've been trying to say here. Again, I'm new to YouTube. I don't have all the resources and whatnot. I don't have the, the fancy microphones and stuff that, really kind of sell the entire image. But again, it's just about, kind of shedding light on this topic. I've been going at it, around and around with some of these folks, whether they be Israelites, whether they be this Aboriginal movement, whether they be these copper-skinned melanated people. I've been going around, round and around with these folks for, I would say, close to, 12 years now. And just trying to tell them, look, this just is not correct. Of course, they come at me all kind of stuff, call me a Uncle Tom or this or that. I'm an indigenous person. I'm a member of a Native American tribe from New England, federally recognized Native American tribe. We still speak our language. We still practice our ceremonies and traditions. As a matter of fact, we have the oldest recorded powwow in the United States, which had been going on for, millennia prior to, the English coming to this portion of the United States. So, our culture is alive and well. We practice it. I practice it. The way I see it is this, just like you're a Christian, right? If you're a Christian, no matter where you go, you're bringing with you, and this is just a, just a comparison. I'm not saying that it's a one-to-one representation of how we are, but, a Christian person is a Christian no matter where they go. If they go to, any place across the globe, they bring with them, their religion, which is the same here. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, I'm always a Native American. And I'm not going to divulge that name, only to protect my people, because I don't need some of these folks going there and trying to assail my people as they've tried in the past. I've been on Facebook with a couple of these folks, and then they actually tried to go through my Facebook and contact some of my people. And, what they're doing is, it's reprehensible. It's almost evil in a way, because you're failing to look at the people that you're affecting as you try to build this narrative, which, again, I think a lot of these folks are doing it for profit. My page is not monetized. I'm not here to make any kind of a money. I'm just here to spread a message, tell the truth about some of these things. Again, and I've said this, I think, in all of my videos so far, that, I'm all for people finding their tribal history, if they have it, and doing their genealogy, and reconnecting with those tribes, and getting to know themselves better. It's what life is. Life is just, it's a series of discoveries of yourself. We go through it as young kids. We go through it as teenagers primarily, and then there's an extension of that into our 20s. And of course, once we reach middle age, where I'm at, you pretty much are comfortable with who you are, and you establish yourself, for the most part, as a person, as the individual that you're going to be for the remainder of your life. So I'm all for that. I'm just not for the lies, because they're blatant lies a lot of the time. As I pointed out in a previous video, in which people are building a completely false narrative, in which the narrative that they're trying to build, there's not even a shred of truth in it. And that's, again, that's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, because it erases Native history. And my question really would be, what is your vendetta against Native American peoples, Native American tribes? What is your vendetta? Within my tribe, just to, we intermarried with black people at some point in the past. We here one anecdote that I'll relay, which was recorded by recorded history, is that how these things worked was, so Native people, we have the highest military enlistment rate of any ethnic group per the size of our population, which is basically a fraction. We make up less than 2% of the population in the United States. The last time I looked at the census, but we have the highest enlistment rate of any ethnic group in the United States. So, and that's going back all the way back to the Revolutionary War, 1776, and prior to that. So within my tribe, how it worked, of course, this is during the slavery era, the 1800s. The Native men had gone off to fight war. They had gone off to fight in the Civil War, I believe, at that point in time. And a number of them didn't come back. So, of course, our numbers, which were already on the decline, we were already an isolated native tribe, and our population had dwindled from anywhere between 20 and 30,000 of my tribe proper, not the Confederacy that was also fell under that moniker at the time. Our numbers were in the low hundreds at that point in time. The men still went off to fight war because the way they saw it was that this is still their land and they're going to protect their land against any enemy. Same thing has gone up. My grandfather's a World War II veteran. I have other people in my family that have been in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Desert Storm, the Afghani War. Every conflict out there, there's been somebody from my family or from my tribe that's been out there on the front lines fighting. So, there was a deficit in Native men in the tribe at that point in time. So this lady found an African American man, and they married. Now the understanding then was that she needed a man to work, to do what men did at that point in time, which is to work the farm and do stuff like that. She also wanted children. He also wanted children. The African American man, who was still slave at that point in time, he wanted his children to be born free. By having a child with that Native woman, that child would come under the status of Native. And so those children would be born free, and they would have the status of a Native American, which of course, freedom for Native people at that time. I mean, we didn't even receive, the Native American, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act didn't even go into effect until 1978. The Native American Graves and Repatriation Act also was 1978. I mean, a lot of the advancements that we got as far as, benefits and things didn't happen until the late 70s into the 80s. Usually, a lot of this following the American Indian Rights Movement, which happened out in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, with the Sioux tribe, battling for their freedom, and at that point in time, then during the 70s, you actually see there's this huge surge in, Native American themed movies and things like that. And at that point in time, following that into the 80s, you actually will see, instances of Native representation, even in cartoons. I mean, my favorite cartoon as a kid was Marshall Bravestar, who was a Native American superhero, essentially, made by the same people that produced He-Man. Filmation, Marshall Bravestar, he had the powers of the wolf, the bear, the hawk, and the puma. And that was like my idol. That was my hero, because as an Indian kid, I was raised Indian, raised speaking my language. My grandmother and my mother, teaching me, the parallels. If I learned the word for dog, I learned ayim, the word for dog in my language. If I learned the word cat, I learned pusaug, which is the long word for cat in my language. You know what I mean? And that was how I was raised and taught. And so, being an Indian, and actively attending Native functions, dressing in regalia that my mother made and my grandmother made by hand, not something that I bought on Amazon or bought from a hobbyist store, something that was literally made for me, and learning the dances and learning my culture and my tradition, that was what I identified with, and that was, what resonated with me. Also G.I. Joe, you had Spirit, who was a Native American, and one thing I noticed into the 90s is that, that representation dwindled. I think you only at that point in time, you had, T-Hawk in Street Fighter, he was a Native American. You had Nightwolf, he was a Native American in Mortal Kombat. You had Turok, who was a Native American Nintendo 64 game. And of course, these guys were all my heroes. In the comic books, you had Ripclaw from Image Comics, from a group called Cyberforce, which were like their version of the X-Men. You had, in the Marvel comics, you had Warpath, John Proudstar, and his brother Thunderbird. And then there were a few other Native characters sprinkled throughout. But these are the characters that I resonated with. These are the characters that I identified with because they were Native. It was something to be proud of. See these badass, Natives out there, in full representation, as Native people, being equal to, a lot of the other, white or black superheroes. Spawn is one of my favorite superheroes. He's a black guy. But Spawn, is one of my, it's so edgy in the 90s. It's one of my favorites. Still to this day, still is one of my favorites. But yeah, to go back to the point, that was how that happened. It was Natives and Africans realizing their shared plight, under the rule of the white man at that point in time, where they were both actively being mistreated, murdered, etc. I mean, even to this day, with missing and murdered Indigenous women, the vast majority of the perpetrators there are non-natives. I mean, they're harming Native women. And I would caution our people to stand up, and escort your women. Don't let your women walk off res or without a male escort. Protect your women. They are our backbone. They are our life givers. They are who give us our teaching and our care and nurturing and whatnot. Protect your women. Don't allow this to continue. Escort those women. Appeal to that warrior spirit within you and protect those women. That was our job as warriors, was to protect the women and the children and the old folks, because those are the people that were most at risk. And 9 times out of 10, how a lot of times the Indian wars, or the Indian skirmishes or battles were won, was we were honorable people. We believed in a certain code in which when we fought, we would primarily only fight the men. They didn't believe that. They had the scorched earth policy, which was, I believe, started by De Soto back in the 1500s, who was a Spanish conquistador, in which he just wiped out everything. And that was the same model that they followed, which they wouldn't fight honorably. It wasn't just man to man. At that point in time, they'd go into the villages and they'd rape, burn, pillage, plunder. And that's saying nothing of the epidemics that followed through the introduction of, diseases or germ warfare, with the smallpox infested blankets and things like that. And then, of course, on the reservations themselves, in which the Native people would be given spoiled rations and things like that, just living in miserable conditions, relegated to the least fertile land in those portions of land. I mean, our story is extensive as far as the level of crap that we put up with, from the white man. The Trail of Tears, and the list goes on and on and on. The Sand Creek Massacre. I mean, from where I'm from, the Great Swamp Massacre. I mean, it was a massacring of women, children, old folks, the most vulnerable. And of course, without women, how are your numbers supposed to grow? And this is what a lot of the African American folks that want to claim this Aboriginal thing, not because they necessarily even have any familial or genetic ties to any tribe. They want to compare their civilization and their accomplishments to that of the white civilization, and so they want to create a one-to-one competition between the two. And we're kind of just caught in the crossfire, in which they're trying to either absorb us or just completely overlook us altogether, as they try to prove this. And for a lot of them, it's mainly because they don't want to come to terms with the fact that their ancestors had very humble beginnings in this country, and so they want to create this grand history that frankly didn't exist. To say that the Olmecs and the Inca and the Mayans and the Aztecs, and the mound builders and all these people were originally African in origin, based on Ivan Van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus, which was, I stated this in another video, was a trend. Even within, the scholarly community, there are trends that arise, they rise and they fall. And that was simply it. Again, his trend arose after the decline of Eurocentrism. Of course, Eurocentrism reared its head sometime later in the early 2000s and late 90s as, again, Europeans tried to prove that they were the first people here, and all the archaeological and paleoarchaeological evidence fell through, and it was just found not to be that. The earliest settlement that they had here was, I believe it was Leif Erikson. I could be wrong with that name. It's been a while since I looked at the information. They created a settlement in what is now Newfoundland, Canada. These are Vikings, mind you, and that was 1100 AD. So this is, they came before Columbus. The Vikings did. To various, varying degrees of success. I believe the first settlement, they were ousted by the natives. They came back a decade or so later. At that point in time, they established a small settlement. Settlement lasted for a couple decades, I think, before they eventually left and went back to Scandinavia or wherever. So, but no, unfortunately, there is no proof that there was a grand African civilization here. I've looked through a lot of research. I've done my own research. I looked through any kind of documentation that I could find, and there's nothing there. Again, within my tribe, the color black was considered sacred. It represented death, and it represented the transition into the spirit world. Of course, the color then would be white. Our sacred colors are red, white, and black. Life, spirit world, and death. And so animals that had black fur, it'd be a black wolf, a black fox, a black bear. The crow is actually our sacred bird. As just to kind of preface, these were considered sacred entities, spirits in physical form. And so, had there been any people with black skin, that absolutely would show up, in our culture, in our teachings. It would be there, absolutely, because that would have been the assumption. Of course, if you look at across the history of the world, a lot of times when people indigenous to various places throughout the world encountered Europeans because of their white skin, one thing that was consistent throughout most cultures of people of color was that white was usually indicative of the spirit world, the afterlife and whatnot. And so there was actually one accounting, and I haven't read this story since I was 16 years old in high school, was when Europeans entered the interior of Africa, and they came down the river on rafts, and they encountered this African tribe. The African tribe, again, because of the lightness of their skin, they also associated white with the spirit world. So they thought that these people were their relatives, as it related to one of their prophecies or to one of their stories, that these people were their relatives returning, because in their legend, their relatives were going to, come down the river. So they thought that, these Europeans were their relatives returning. And when these people opened fire on them, these Europeans opened fire on them, they learned pretty quickly that that was not the case. That's just an example, that's somewhat consistent in a lot of cultures. And so, again, and I say that to say this, had we, based upon what our sacred colors were, had we encountered African folks, there may have been, a similar, a similar view of these folks, but it shows up nowhere. It shows up absolutely nowhere. None of our oral histories, none of our legends, nothing. We still have stories of, Chepi, who was a mischievous spirit. We have stories of Utanit, the fire spirit. But we don't have any stories, of these dark-skinned folks who, again, would have been, considered, spirits. There's another story of Habermas, who was considered, which is a giant in one of our stories. And he pulled up the root of the great oak tree and he slew a giant beaver in one of the stories, and he had black skin. Of course, he's a giant. This giant, towered over mountains and things like that. But again, there's no telling of that. There's no telling of these folks and these groups of people. So again, it's very dangerous, and it's detrimental, and it's very insulting for these folks to try to come around here and claim our cultures and our traditions and everything for themselves, Really, for a lot of them, really just for monetary gain, because they think that there's some kind of an Indian check. Look, I've been an Indian all my life. I've never gotten an Indian check just for being Indian. I've had to go out in the world and work for anything I had. I had a number of different professions, a number of different trades that I was in. At no point in time did I just receive a check for being an Indian. Even when I worked for the tribe, I had to go out there and actively work a 9 to 5 for my tribe, working natural resource, providing wood to the elders and doing stuff like that. There's no Indian check. I'm here to tell you, there's just none. So if you think that you're going to, this is the fast track to reparations, which is another argument I got into with a gentleman through Facebook, as a matter of fact. This guy came out of nowhere. He made it seem like he was just trying to get in contact, or get back in touch with his heritage. And ultimately it eventually he revealed his true intentions, which was really just to, gain reparations. And they think that, some of them think that, through claiming Native American, they're going to gain reparations. You're not going to gain that, my friend. We never did. Nobody gave us a huge check for all the suffering and crap they put us through. Never happened. So, that's just something to think about. Again, I'm going to post the link in the description here, so you can kind of look at the testimony of other people of mixed lineage, and you can kind of understand, how far-reaching this is, and just how much misinformation is being put out there. It's disingenuous, and it's tough to see. I myself remember being in school and going to school with young black kids and stuff like that, and some people would bully them, not because they were black, because they were small nerdy kids and whatnot. And, I'd stand up for them, and so for I've also dated women, Jamaican women. I've dated women from the African American community, and always had respect for them. Our relationships ended because of one thing or another, usually pertaining to the modern world, not pertaining to anything to deal with race or anything like that. But to me, for a community that I've never had any animosity toward, for them to just kind of come for our cultures in the way they're coming, that is very alarming. And now, of course, there are plenty of proud Black and African American folks that fully acknowledge, and I commend those folks, and we stand with you in a lot of your issues and whatnot, and we sympathize, because like I said, a lot of stuff you guys go through, we go through as well. But again, these abos, as the popular term is, Aboriginal folks, copper-skinned folks, melanated, we're all melanated, but even Caucasian folks have melanin in their skin, they just have less. So, I mean, just that title doesn't make any sense, because you're just assuming that nobody except for people from this one diaspora, have melanin in the skin. Anybody that can gain a tan, or freckles, that's evidence right there of melanin. So, you might want to rethink that title, because I think that is very condescending, and it just completely overlooks, all the myriad of people in this world. I have no problem with anybody in particular. And I've always said it just like this: I don't care what color you are. I have no problem with, basically assholes come in all colors. So I don't have a problem with, you based on what your ethnic origin is. I love everybody equally. I met cool people from every walk of life, from every corner of this country. And I've been across this country a few times. I've met cool people from Africa, from Asia, from India. Well, India is part of Asia. Russia, you name it. Again, that's part of Asia. Europe, North America, South America. I met cool people from everywhere. But I don't like assholes. I don't care who you are. You could be my first cousin. You can be my brother. But if you're an asshole, I'd just walk the other way, because we have nothing to talk about. And I hate to say it, but some of these people are just straight up assholes, and ignorantly so, and purposefully ignorantly so. And when you try to educate them, they're absolutely resistant to it. I mean, it's like they just don't hear you, or don't want to hear you, because they're so hell bent on creating this narrative and pushing this narrative, because they think that there's something to gain from it. There's absolutely nothing to gain from it. There's absolutely nothing to gain from it. If anything, all you're doing is erasing Native people. You're erasing Native people. People like myself that would actually help you find your history, or kind of, if you wanted to get back in contact with your tribe, I would tell you, hey, this is probably the best way to start that process, of trying to find out where you come from and whatnot. I have nothing against you, but if you come from my culture and you come from my people and you want to just, completely say that we're fakes or we're mongoloids or we're whatever else, miss me with, to coin a modern phrase, miss me with the bullshit, because I'm not here for it, dude. If you want to sit down and have a debate with me, we could do that. If you want to just have a positive discourse in which is a sharing of information, we could do that. But if you're just going to try to write me off, walk the other way, pal, because you've already presented yourself as an enemy. And that's precisely what you're doing. Phone's ringing. And I'm not the kind of person that keeps enemies. I'm the kind of person I would rather deflect that kind of negative discourse and interaction. I'd rather, turn something negative into something positive in which we can both come to an understanding and mutual understanding, which both helps us both grow. I'm all for education. I love learning new stuff. I've never been the kind of guy just to turn my back because something I don't want to hear. Because sometimes when you're learning stuff, you're gonna hear stuff you don't want to hear. That's part of the learning process. You're just sometimes, even if you're doing research on something, sometimes you're going to come to a dead end. It's just what it is. Or things may completely turn into something you didn't think it was. I've been on archaeological sites. We found bone, and it was such a small fragment of bone we didn't know what it was. But when it was submitted for testing, it came back as a turkey bone. And now I was actually relieved for that. I actually have been on archaeological sites where we had to put the piece of a skull back together and reinter it into the ground because the area was just riddled with human remains. The entire neighborhood was a ceremonial resting place for our ancestors, and these folks have built a neighborhood there. So that's pretty tough. And so and a lot of them were not even trying to let us know what was there. So we already have to deal with erasure where people are trying to remove our bones, and the things that we could potentially learn from that, and things they could learn from that, even more so. They just don't want to. They want to destroy it. And so for now, another race of brown-skinned people to kind of come at us, or another group of brown-skinned people, not a race, I'm sorry, I don't mean to demonize or generalize. I just misspoke. That's extremely disheartening. Because again, we would stand with you in your endeavors, and we have in a lot of cases. As a matter of fact, when we had our we've dealt with some issues in the past. The African American communities and groups came and stood with us as well. Which was awesome. And it just proves that together, if we're on the same page, together we can accomplish far more than we can apart, and that's with any group. Unity is the way forward. It's not division. It's not erasure. It's none of that. It's unity. That's the only way anything's ever been accomplished in this country. Is through the unity of peoples, not through the division of peoples. So, anyway, this video went on a little bit longer than I wanted. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. But I'm speaking the truth. I don't want to lie to anybody. I wouldn't post stuff online for the world to see if I was going to post lies so somebody can laugh in my face and call me a liar. That's just not what's going to happen. And a lot of the pushback these abo folks are getting is because they're posting lies, or they're posting misinformation, or they're posting cherry-picked information that is just not true. It doesn't hold up under scrutiny. And it's not because people are trying to erase you. That's one tactic they use. They try to flip the script. They know what they're doing, first and foremost. These influencers and whatnot, they know what they're doing. And so they will try to accuse you of what they're doing before you have a chance to, kind of call them out on their nonsense. So, they'll say, oh, you're being racist. I'm not being racist. I'm just trying to tell the truth. Oh, you're trying to erase us. No, my friend, you're the one that's trying to erase us. And it's, this is unprovoked. I don't even know where this came from. It just started out of nowhere. And like I said, earlier, my best guess is it's because you want to compare your cultures to the white cultures or to the European cultures. And again, I'm using that term a lot, white. That doesn't speak to anybody presently. Of course, we're looking at things in a historical sense, in which, as everyone knows, the attitude was was very much them against the world. Quite literally, it was them against the world as they try to just, that point in time, try to take the world over. Of course, things have changed and people have changed and views have changed, and some of the best friends I've had have been not to sound like that, but some of the best friends I've had, been white folks, and I very much consider them brothers and relatives because, they stood with me through some of the tougher times of my life. So, it has nothing to do with, being racist in any way, shape, or form. It's simply just describing who these people were, because that is who they were. And of course, we're looking at things again in a historical sense, and the prevailing attitude toward Native people and toward basically everybody they saw beneath them. I mean, you literally have a book called The White Man's Burden. I mean, I don't remember who the author was, but we're talking about that point in time. And of course, if we have any supremacists that want to peek their head, and we're talking about you too, because, pal, look at it like this: everywhere there would be no American history or European American history without Native Americans, because everywhere you went in this country, from the East Coast to the West, it was usually Native people helping your explorers. Okay, it was Native people a lot of times before the relationship soured, and that were helping out settlers go westward, in which there were healthy trade relations and whatnot. It was when encroachment occurred, and when people were being misused, or they were killing off the buffalo population. People are starving. People are not going to be nice. Okay, I would also say a lot of these conflicts between tribes that they love to dredge up. A lot of times that was because tribes were being forced into territories, and people just think it was a free-for-all here. No, every tribe had laws, and there were treaties and there were agreements between tribes in which this is our territory and this is your territory. The reason of that was that this is what we require to sustain our people, to sustain our children. And so this is my side of the river, that's your side of the river. That way we can both fish, we can both provide for our families, and we can both coexist peacefully. Because again, when famines and things like that occur, nobody's going to be in the right state of mind. And one thing I find funny, is that most of the descriptions that I've read, it was never about combative natives that just came off, just right off the rip, just attacking, settlers or whatnot. It was usually a friendly interaction. It was typically when the settlers or their representatives tried to enforce European laws on natives and tried to have those European laws supersede native law. That was when conflict occurred. There's a book called God, War, and Providence, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. There's a lot of books that kind of go into detail about how these interactions devolved into violence, and Native Americans are usually not the aggressor. So anyway, link's going to be in the description of these Afro-Indigenous folks speaking out about what's going on here. And again, the truth is the truth. It's not what we want it to be. It is what it simply is. 1 million people can believe a lie, but that doesn't make it the truth. And if I'm that one person standing against 1 million that's speaking the truth, that's just what it's going to be. That's just what it is. So anyway, have a great day, folk, and see you in the next one.